Grom. Alright, I bought this guy not too long ago. This is a 2015 Honda Grom MSX 125. I rode it a little bit without knowing what the last guy has really done to it. So I'm going to start taking stuff apart and make sure it's right, because that's probably what you should do when you get a new bike. First thing you got to do, get your key, turn that, lift up on the seat towards the back, pop that off. They had originally some sort of a crazy sound system hooked up here that I cut off immediately. That was in my way. They were giant can speakers, and I didn't keep any. That's what this wires to. I've got to get out of here and remove these fairings and get all that junk out of there because I don't like it, don't want it. First thing I'm going to do is do a valve adjustment because I don't know if it's ever been done. And I've got 4,731 miles. I love a little animation on the Grom, and who knows if it's ever had any maintenance done. So I have to remove this top cover to get to the intake valve and this bottom cover down here. Get to the exhaust valve. I'm going to clean this a little bit too and do the adjustments on those. You know, take these two little panels off here. Also need to do, well, let's see, do I need a chain adjustment? Looks like the part's got about the most free play in it. That actually moved up 1 3/8. That's exactly what the free play is supposed to be, so I'm not going to adjust that. I am going to clean and lube that chain though, because it's not, doesn't look like it's got any lubricant left on it. You can adjust the chain though by loosening this bolt, holding one side, loosening the other. That's the axle nut. And loosen air. Let's see. Looks like you loosen the outside one and then tighten the inside one, and it moves this whole wheel back or forward if you need it to. My only advice, I'm not going to do that because again I've got the right amount of free play, but if you do have to do that, make sure these stay in alignment. Use a set of calipers or something and measure from there at the end. You do not want a motorcycle wheel out of alignment. That sounds not fun. So make sure you move them evenly. That's how you do a rear adjustment on it as well for alignment purposes. These rods should be the same size if they're not bent or messed up. So if they're manufactured properly, you can look and see there's little tick marks there too, but you can measure from any of these spots and just make sure you've got the two sides of it. I'll look at the other side. It's the other end. Make sure those two are in similar places. And I might measure mine because they look like they're, yeah, my wheel may not even be on straight. Who knows? When you buy these bikes, you never know. Actually, I'm fairly certain it's not. So, yeah, I may be adjusting that anyway to make sure the tire's right. Fun stuff. I've also got a new spark plug. It only takes 1 quart of oil. This is actual Honda oil. You don't have to use that. It's an 830. Make sure you do one that can work for a motorcycle. Usually needs wet clutch stuff, so I don't know. Requirement for Honda lubricants. I'll look into that later. But I bought the actual Honda stuff. I actually bought a kit on Amazon that was a maintenance kit for it, because you're supposed to change the air filter at 5,000 miles, and I'm almost there. So it came with an air filter, a spark plug, a crush washer, and a thing of oil for, I can't remember how much it was, but it was less expensive than just the air filter and the spark plug was, so I got a free oil change out of it. So I'm going to change the oil too after I've done adjusting the valve clearance, and then I'm going to attach all that to this video. I'll check that rear tire and see if I'm in alignment. Do the valve clearance, do the spark plug, do the oil change. The oil change is particularly important. I looked up the Grom, and you have to take this cover off. The oil filter is actually an oil spinner. and there's a screen in there too. So you take off 10 bolts around here, you have to remove the clutch cable, and I'll have to adjust the clutch too because I've never done that. So those are the 4 things I'm going to play with: rear tire, valve adjustment, clutch cable adjustment, and oil change. The spark plug's kind of a freebie. I mean, it's right there. It takes 2 seconds. Yeah, we'll get a good maintenance video going on and see if we can get this thing running tip top. Runs pretty good right now, but I'd like it to be, you know, right. So check it out. Alright, I put the bike in neutral. I was going to do the valve clearance job first. Doesn't have to be in neutral here, I just did it. Take out these 2 covers. That guy uses a 6mm Allen. I got these little socket guys, 6 and a 10. This port's 10mm, and then that's a 17mm hex bolt inside there to turn the engine. Turn it counterclockwise. That's pretty important. Never turn it clockwise. Alright, inside this hole, maybe you can see it. If it's not too bright, let me put a hand maybe in front of the light. Anyway, there's a little hash mark and a little T. If you got the F, you're wrong. There's a T in there. Kind of wants to sit where it's supposed to, but that hash mark should line up with, there's a little hash mark on the upper side of that too. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see it pretty well when you're doing it. So that should be top dead center. When I take this cover off, I'll be able to wiggle the rocker arm to make sure it's top dead center, and I'm not 180 degrees off, but I haven't taken the covers off yet. They're little 6mm bolts, so find you a little wrench. When I go to do this, I actually don't have a feeler gauge that's small enough. The intake's supposed to be 0.004 inches and the exhaust 0.007. My smallest is 0.005, so I'm probably, it's 0.004 plus or minus 0.001, so I'm not going to set it to 5. I'm going to get 5 really tighter than it's supposed to be, so I know I'm closer to 4. Before I go further on the valve adjustment, I thought I'd come over to this side and check out my spark plug. The plug is a normal, it's a 5/8 spark plug socket. If you've ever done a spark plug on a lawnmower or anything, it's probably the same one. Most cars use that too, but I've had different sizes. Mine came off pretty easy. It's about the right color. It's not running too rich or anything, so I'm going to replace it just because my little tune-up kit came with it. Usually when I do cars, I put a hair of anti-seize on the threads. I think that gap's right. I don't want to mess up that iridium end, so I'm not going to do it. When I do cars, I usually put a hair of anti-seize on the threads to make sure they don't get stuck, but this one's going to get changed often enough. My car wouldn't stay in there anywhere from 50 to 100,000 miles. This one will be off probably in a year or 2 again. So I'm not going to bother putting gunk up there that might get into my engine. There we go. Hand thread it really nice and easy here. Changing the spark plug on this thing is just a joke of an easy thing to do. I didn't look up how tight it's supposed to be. Probably should. But I'm just kind of get it to about there. Yeah, that's an aluminum head. I didn't even crank on it. I just got it tight. You really don't want to break the threads on that. If you mess the threads up in your head, you'll be sad. This kind of came apart, or came off the old one. I'm not sure what it is. I'm gonna put it on the new one, just because why not? It's not gonna hurt anything. It may help seal something here. So I'm just gonna sit it on there. Are you engaged? I think so. We'll see. If it starts, I'll know. If it doesn't, then that's the first thing I'll look at, but thought I'd knock that out. I keep getting sidetracked. I did take that little piece back off the spark plug. It was stopping me from seating really well. It now sits how it's supposed to. Decided to do the airbox instead. You're supposed to have 7, 8 screws holding it on. I only had 7. This one was missing up here in the top right. You got to turn the steering wheel back and forth to get the screws all out, but then it's got to be like head on, and then this will drop right out the bottom, and these are the air filters. And this one's looking not great, so I'm kind of glad I was doing this. It's supposed to hit at 5,000 miles anyway, so I'm right at the service interval. Oh damn, there's a screw in there that holds it on afterwards. Don't bite me. Alright, don't put these things in with an impact, but I'm going to take it out with one, just speed here. The horn's really in my way. Alright, I want to make sure that filter stays in place. Yeah, that's not too clean and pretty. I've got another. I put in a Honda official spark plug, and I've got a Honda official air filter here too. This is all in an Amazon kit that came together. So I'm gonna take the screw out of the other one. I didn't realize there was a screw holding it in there. That's an easy out of the way. And then I'll get back to my valve adjustment that I've sidetracked. Okay, my exhaust valve needed a little bit of checking. So here's what we're looking at. I did find top dead center finally. It was a pain. The amount of wiggle you get out of this rocker arm is just tiny, but you'll know if it's tight. So if you want to feel the difference, go around 180 degrees into, well, 360 degrees, 180 on the motor, 360 on the crankshaft, I guess. Trying to find my right size here. So I got a feeler gauge, 0.007. Okay. Got my 0.007 feeler gauge where we're going in. See that little gap when I rock up and down? You ought to be able to slide in between those two plates that I can just barely slide in. I get some drag on that. And the 0.008 won't go in. So how you tighten that is you loosen this outside nut just a hair. It's a 8mm. Loosen it just a bit, and then you can use your fingers to twist this little valve spacer guide, and then tighten that guy back down. And again, just like with the spark plug, just kind of go hand tight. Don't torque on it. Bad things will happen. But anyway, I'm not going to show you how to do the top because it's exactly the same, except it's 0.004. And again, I'm going to have half that because I don't have a 0.004. So I'm going to make the 5 not fit and hope for the best. So if you ever need any of these numbers, pretty much everything you need for the bike is written back here on these numbers. This says it's 0.1mm for intake, 0.17mm for exhaust, which is 0.004 and 0.007. Tells you the idle speed, spark plug gap. The other side tells you how to tension your chain. There's some good information just on the stickers, so check those out. But anyway, so I'm verified there. Everything's good. Did get some oil out of that one when it popped down, as to be expected. I mean, it's a low point in the motor, so I put my oil pan down. So I'm going to put that one back together. I think it's done. Let me grab this one more time. Again, that's an 8mm. Yeah, you don't want to bend that rocker arm, so you just want it a little bit of clearance. It wasn't off by much, but I don't know when it was done last. This wasn't my bike until a month ago. So, all right, I'll check in again when I guess I'm going to try to see if this is out of alignment as we talked about and move that forward a notch. I don't know. Looks bad. Chain looks fine, so I'm going to clean it. I don't really need to walk you through that. I've got a brush, chain brush, so I can spray on chain cleaner. Spray it around. Just put it in neutral. Try to pop this up or have somebody lean it on the wheel on the kickstand. Spin it around, spray this chain cleaner on it, run it through with the brush to get the grime off of it. Let it dry, and then throw some chain wax on it. It's wax with lubricant. and get that all the way around and then let it dry again. So that's easy enough. What else am I going to do? The brake fluid level's fine. I checked that. The brake pads are fine. You can go in and see if you've got enough brake pad left. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little bit on that one. It's hard to see the backside, but it's got some meat left on it. Same for the back. I got quite a bit left. That one's easy to see. So when I do this axle, I'm gonna loosen this guy, have somebody lift it a little bit, and then I think you just loosen this one and then tighten that one, and then tighten this back down to move it. Not sure. I'll find it out. It looks like it. Then I've got to adjust the clutch cable because I never have, but do the oil change here after the valve adjustment. Okay, haven't done the oil change yet. I have to heat it up for that, but this was the post-valve adjustment, spark plug, and air filter change first startup here, and it sounds pretty good. I might change that idle speed, because now that I look down there, it says 1400 plus or minus when it's warm. It's not warm yet, I just turned it on, but I'm sitting at probably about 11. Hard to tell with this gauge. I may get out one of my... it might be fine. It sounds okay. I've got a tack that wraps around the spark plug wire and can tell you how fast an engine's going. And I'll get that out one of these days. But as for right now, it's working. So heat it up, I'll do the oil change. Wasn't sure if I was actually out of alignment, so I ran a wire. Just electrical wire from 2 jack stands. Got it touching the tire up here, touching the tire there, so I know I'm in line. Touching the tire there. There is actually a gap at this back tire. So, if I do what I wanted to and move this axle nut up where the notches are in line, that tire should actually be in line. I just wanted to prove it was an actual problem before I go changing things, but it looks like, I mean, that only needs to go, that's on a little past notch 2, that is a little past notch 1, it's probably 1/4 of an inch, and that's about what I'm off. So I think they do need to be lined up. Yours may not be if your swing arms are bent off, not manufactured properly, but I think my alignment is actually off, and somebody for sure wrecked this bike before I had it. I mean, check this out. I've got abrasion marks there. This is all eaten down. This is all tilted, actually. Somebody popped this up and scraped this on the ground and messed up the turn signals on both sides. So it wouldn't have surprised me if something was bent a little bit and the alignment had to be out of range. That's why I checked this, but mine actually should line up. So check yours before you decide to loosen the axle nut and put it in alignment. But yeah, I think with that 3-point test, I'm off just a hair. Okay, aligning the rear tire was actually super easy. So I set this up. I set up a string between, or it's not a string, it's copper wire, but between 2 jack stands, and I've got at every point the tire or the wire is just barely touching the tire, so it's not influencing the wire at all, which tells me I've got a pretty straight line on my wire. The key to this though is you've got to get the steering wheel exactly straight with the parallel with this. So this may not be the best way to do this, but it's a straight line. And I've readjusted my back wheel. I had 2 notches out. I've moved it up just a couple millimeters, and I no longer have that big gap at the back that I had. So the wheel's a little more in line, and I think it was out of alignment because it looks like this side here was wearing much more than the other. So I think I'm lined up now. The way you do this, super easy. It's a 19 millimeter bolt. The other side's a 14 question mark? 14 millimeter. I held that one still. I used my breaker bar here and got my 19 millimeter free. And then you can just adjust these two. Screw them out and you can push the tire that way, screw them in and you can push the tire this way. It's a 12 millimeter and a 10 millimeter. You need some deep well sockets for that, obviously. There's a big stud here. And then get it aligned with the other side. Actually, to get as perfect as I thought it needed to be, I don't have the exact same measurements on both sides. This one actually had to go in a little more, but now I'm good. I'm going to crank this one down first, then I'm going to tighten these guys so everything stays in place. If you tighten these guys before you tighten the axle nut down, you're going to pull the tire back that way, so don't do that. But yeah, super easy. Easier than I thought. And I didn't mess with the adjustment on this side, so I shouldn't have screwed up my chain slack, but I'll check it again. But this side is how you adjust your chain slack, so but you got to keep your wheel aligned, so move them together usually. Alright, oil change. Heated it up. There are two bolts down here that look like they're the drain plug. You want the one that sits right here by the exhaust, not the one on the other side. It's not the low point. Almost took it off. That's the bad one. 10 8 millimeter bolts. Get off the side cover. Make sure you disconnect this first, because if you do it afterwards, you'll pop this clutch piece the wrong direction and it'll release this guy, and then you have to jimmy it back in the hole. And it scared me when it popped out and I didn't know where it belonged. 3 10 millimeter bolts on here. They need medium Loctite on them when they go back, and it spins the engine when you try to take them off, so give them a good whack with your palm and you can break them. A bunch of oil will come out of here, and then just clean out the gunk and put it back together. Check your gaskets. You're supposed to replace this one and this one. I'm not going to. Not this time. Alright, my Chinese off-brand GoPro died, so we're doing cell phone video here. Actually, probably looks better anyway. So this is how it originally came apart. I cleaned. Make sure you use a lint-free cloth. Don't get paper towel gunk inside that oil spinner. Anyway, I cleaned out all the inside of that. There was a bunch of junk. Oil filter screen. Pull that out. Clean it off with the towel as well. It only fits in there one way with one side up, so you really can't mix it up. It won't fit properly any other way. I haven't tightened this one down yet. I want to tighten them down pretty evenly. I just put it in there a little bit. Again, use thread locker. That's important. So that's what I'm doing now. I had them put in there for safety, but I'm going through one by one and putting just a little bit of thread locker on the threads. So, and putting everything back together. These two bolts back here to get this one off are bare to get to because this is in the way. I didn't want to crack this and break it because it's connected to the rear brake, that hydraulic system. So I used a U-joint to get the rest of them, but I just got in there with an actual open-ended wrench and got those other two. Yeah, it's actually a lot easier than I thought it was. And the thread locker's on there because you can't really get those too tight without spinning the engine, so you just want to get them like, again, hand cranked down, got them tight, tried to hold it a little bit to spin them. The thread locker will do the rest. Because it takes 20 minutes for the thread locker to set, it's not fully set on there for checking that gasket around. Looks like it got squished down a little there, maybe. It's not fully set for like 24 hours, so I'm not going to put oil back in the bike until in the morning. But at least let that thread locker dry first. This is your clutch pack. By the way, if you've ever got to replace your clutch, take this guy all the way off. Take those bolts out. There's some heavy springs in here. Get them off. You should be able to replace the clutch and the clutch plates. So, I mean, we're just a step away from a brand new clutch, too, if we ever need it. The bike's super easy to work on. So I'm going to put it back together, but I'm not going to put oil back. You put oil in the oil checker. Damn, forgot the name, but there's a fill hole there. Dipstick. There we go. You put oil back in there, just a quart. It's fine, but like I said, I'm not going to do that till the morning, but I am going to crank this back together. When you get it back together, make sure you put these wires go underneath these bolts, holds them in place. Same for this guy, and then reconnect your clutch cable, and I'm gonna make sure the clutch still has the right amount of free play in it. But after that, I'm pretty done. So it's the easiest bike I've ever had to work on. It's amazing how simple this is. Air cooled, 1 cylinder. No reason to break coolant lines and everything, to do valve adjustments. It's just awesome.